Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo. I'm here to bring you guys another episode of Audiobooks for the Win, and we're going to be doing probably my favorite topic, and that's going to be talking about listening speeds. And I have two amazing guests with me on today's episode. I'm going to go ahead and already state my listening speed, and this is like the only listening speed that you have to use is 3.5 speed. Nothing less. That's just a perfect listening speed. So without further ado, I'll let my guests introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the topic. So Desiree, you are up first.
Okay, my name's Desiree from the channel GenkiReader. Also, I have an Instagram page at the same name, but without the space. My preferred listening speed is 1.25 or at the highest 1.75 if the narrator is very slow, like extremely slow. But
Okay.
2-point speed is just too much for me.
Okay.
I'm Tamika from the channel Library of Tomes, and I prefer 3.5, but with like almost every other app, we have to listen at 3 times speed, so I won't go under 3 unless it's just on script.
Okay. So we have like a nice variety. We have like two people on the high end, and then we have Desiree on the slow end.
Nice variety.
I was like, we have like pretty two extremes right here. So I think, what are some of the pros and cons of listening at a slower speed versus listening at a higher speed? I think is a good question to start us off with.
All right, should I go first? Or
You go first. Anyone can go in. I would say for accents, I do get why you want to go slower. I definitely feel there are some narrators that I just know off the bat, the way they narrate, it works just as well on 3 to 3.5. But if it's like a Irish or like Karina Halley has a book that's narrated with a French accent, the male narrator has a French accent, could not listen to that on 3.5. I was like, what is he like? What? So like, I think that's like an interesting thing. Like, do you think like there's benefits of listening slower or listening faster? Like, do you miss a lot of details? Like, what are you guys' thoughts?
I don't think that I miss anything. Like, I feel like I consume the story much better when it's like higher, because if not, I'm going to get distracted and like I'll be paying attention to literally anything else. And if I'm listening higher, I'm forcing myself to pay attention to the story. Whereas I'm listening on 1 time speed, I'm literally not paying attention to anything.
Oh, see, so I have like the opposite feeling about it. So what I listened to, there was one book that I listened to at higher than 2 point speed because I had to do it for a live show. I think it was Alicia Rye. It was an Alicia Rye book. I forget which one. In the viral series, the first one. And I missed so many details. I couldn't tell you anything that happened in that book except for what that girl's job was. I didn't even know she was Black. Like, there was so much that I missed, and I was trying. It just makes me so anxious how fast it's going. So like, I'm paying attention to my anxiety rather than the book. I think I catch more things when it's slower. I feel like I'm absorbing the story. I get to mingle with the characters, and I just prefer it. Like, someone's telling me the story. I like that way better.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you to some extent, Desiree. I would say there have been instances where I've started a book on 3.5 speed, got like halfway through, and I was like, wait, I have no idea what happened throughout this entire book. I don't know the plot. I don't know the characters. I don't know anything. And then I usually have to go back and re-listen, and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of getting a little bit more at a slower speed and then ramp it up. But I think that is sometimes a testament to the writing style. I think the writing style definitely influences how quickly you can speed up the narration. If it's like your simple, like just contemporary romance, nothing too crazy, pretty straightforward, then I can go, okay, I'm not gonna miss any details. Like versus like where some fantasy, you can kind of run into that where it's like, okay, I need to slow this down to take it in. But in general, I would say I don't tend to necessarily pay attention to all the details, if that makes sense. I'm like not a detail oriented reader where I'm not going to be the person who can break down point by point what happened in the book. I'm more interested in like, did I like the overall arc of the characters? Do I know who they are? Do I know what happened to them? do I know what the main conflict in the story is? Like, so like for me, like I'm fine with letting go of some of those details because I just really want. That's what rereads are for. Like to me, I can go back and get those details if I want to. So I don't know. Is that maybe some of the reason why you like to slow down because you want to ingest all those details of the story?
I like details. Details are important for me. If I don't know everything about the setting and how they feel about certain things, and ooh, there's a joke later on in the book that related to the beginning of the book, those things are important to me. And if I miss it, then I'm like, what did I do? I don't get the joke and I don't get why this is funny or why this is cute. I'm one of those people where it's like, if there's a character that's so cold and like non feeling in the beginning, I'm like, I know I'm going to like them in the end if the writer does it correctly. Just from little details that you pick up about them. Like in my favorite series currently, the Will Darling series, nobody likes Kim in the first book, but I could tell that I was going to like Kim after I read the first book just because of like small, tiny details that you got from his character. So they're important to me.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the opposite. Like tiny details don't matter as much for me. Like when I'm reading it, it's fine. Man, that's Dallas. But
Hi, Dallas. He's cute.
He said that details really matter to him. But for me, like I'm gonna forget the details within 24 hours regardless. Like I forget character names. So like it does not matter. Because like even if I'm taking it in when I'm reading it, it's not gonna matter in a week after I've finished the book because I'm not even gonna remember what the characters' names were without going back and looking at the back of the book.
Oh, I don't remember names, but I'll remember like the one moment where they did like that one particular thing or something like that. Like I remember in the Will Darling series, there's a part in like the very beginning where Kim gives Will this look and like there was like the tip off that he might be interested in him. And I think about that a lot. That one very specific moment.
That is like a very specific, kind of not relevant point.
See, but I think about it a lot.
But I wonder how you guys feel. Do you think listening speed is dependent on genre? Do you find if you like go to any of the genres, you change like what your max level that you tend to speed things up to?
I don't listen to anything else.
Like,
okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I do just because and I don't listen to much outside of romance, but like if I'm doing like a fantasy romance, which I don't read very often, or if I'm reading like anything not contemporary, I tend to slow it down and then speed it up. So I start lower. But like starting lower is literally 3 times speed or 2.5, and then go up to 3.5.
Okay, like one of the pros of like listening at 3.5 speed, it's like you can get through audiobooks so incredibly fast. It's like I even have like a whole calculator where I can plug in the time for the audiobook and then it tells me what listening speed, how long I have to finish it. Like I do that. So I stack like if you give me a 6-hour audiobook, I'm like, I can finish that in a day. No problem. I can that's like only like an hour and 30 minutes at 3.5.
An hour and 30 minutes? Y'all are wild.
Well, because like
short attention span, I can't do it. I am such a short attention span. That's why I'm at 3.5 times speed.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You have to pay attention, or you're just like it's just gibberish whispering in your ear. The only time I slow down is when I'm driving while listening to an audiobook. And that's like to 3. Like 3.5, I like turn up the volume really loud so I can make out all the words because like like car sounds and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't capture the story as well, but that's the only time I slow it down. But that's like only the 3.
People at the stop signs hear your dirty books. This is funny.
When I'm on the highway, I don't care. It's like it's whatever. But I feel like for romance in particular, I tend to not really care about the details because you already like. Yes, like okay, it's not spoiler for all romances. They all end in like some type of happily ever after. There's going to be some type of third act conflict that some authors do really well and some authors don't do really well. that kind of pushes either them closer to the happily ever after or adds another obstacle. So like when I think about it in terms of that, I'm like, okay, I don't need to know a ton about these characters unless I'm really, really enjoying the story. Then I'm like, I naturally pick up those details and I can just talk to you like, oh, I remember when that character did that, when that character did that. I had people like, we read the same book and they mentioned a scene. And I'm like, I literally don't remember that happening because I checked out. But yeah, I think it's interesting how different genres can affect listening speed. So now I would say, like, how do you find what listening speed is right for you? Do you recommend that people start at 1? Or, because I think a lot of people say around 2 is like more conversational level. So I'm wondering what you guys feel. Do you feel like if you're new to audiobooks, would you recommend someone start at 2 or 1? Or kind of like somewhere up in the upper range of the 2s?
Well, I started my very first audiobook. It was some YA book. I think it was like that series about it's illegal to be in love. I forget what it's called. I listened to it on 1 time speed, and it was okay. First off, the narration wasn't that great, but like it was an okay listen to it at 1 time speed because I had never listened to an audiobook before. I was always about reading it straight off the paper. But after a while, I was just like, they're speaking like inexplicably slow at 1 time speed. It's not even conversational. It's just really drawn out, and every single word has to be punctuated. So I put it at 1.25 so it feels a little bit more like spoken word to me. Maybe 1.5 if they're just extremely slow.
Extremely slow.
There are some people, I'm just wondering how they're that slow in the audiobook and why. Just to get their words to pronounce? I don't know.
Yeah, I would say I started at 2 times speed, just straight off the bat. But again, I have the shortest attention span ever. Like I joke all the time that if I could watch TV and movies on 2 times speed, I would do it. Because I watch YouTube videos at 2 times speed.
I'm about to say you could YouTube that way.
Like if they make that an option, I'm just absolutely ruined. No one will ever watch anything with me ever again.
That'd be so annoying. You're like, why are they moving so fast?
Yeah.
But I would honestly say start at 2, and if it feels too fast, go down. Because I feel like if you're jumping into one, and I always recommend if you are starting audiobooks for the first time to do a reread or do like a memoir or something, because I just feel like that's so much easier to like tell
to get into.
If it's the audiobook is the issue or the story's the issue. Because like you're already gonna know you love the story if it's a reread. And if it's you're not telling the story with a memoir, like it's a little bit different than just like just a book that you've not read yet. So I would suggest 2 times speed, and then if it's too fast to go down. But like I don't understand how anyone can listen at 1 time speed because they do feel so. If it sounds like they're drunk, that's and I'm quoting Izzy because Izzy.
I agree.
So that's what it sounds like. So yeah, I would say 1.5 or 2.
1.5, 2. I would actually say 2.5. That's where I started out. No, it's just because that's what I recommend because that's just how I normally read. Like what I used to do, I would have the physical book and then I would read the physical book while I was listening to the audiobook. And then as I got more comfortable with that, so like 2.5 was a great starting point for me because I felt like that was as quick as I was reading, if that makes any sense.
Oh, so you're a fast reader off the bat then?
So I'm a fast reader off the bat. So like that's how that worked for me.
Okay.
Yeah, like once I was taught like how to speed read, like that's how I read everything.
Okay, so see, this is really important because I was trying to learn how to speed read in elementary school because another classmate was like, my mom taught me how to speed read. It doesn't take that long to read a chapter. And I tried to do whatever the heck he was trying to do, and I processed nothing. I had no idea what happened in that chapter. I tried so hard so many times to teach myself to read faster manually, and it just never worked. So I listen about the same speed as I can read also. So about 1:25 to 1.5, depending. So my eyes don't even track as fast as that goes sometimes.
Yeah, I completely understand. I think that's an interesting point to explore further. Is that I wonder how much like I already stated a little bit how my reading influences my listening, because
Mhm.
even now at 3.5, I can technically read a chapter faster than an audiobook when narrated to me, if that makes any sense. Just because if you want to like very quick listen, if you want to learn how to speed read, it's kind of you focus on dialogue and then you focus on like the first and last sentence of every paragraph, like generally, and then you're not interested in like understanding, like comprehending like each word in every sentence. You just want to make sure that you get grab the gist of what's happening, if that makes sense. So like you're more like scanning instead of like I don't read like the man went to. I would just read man, where he went to, who's this character, what did they say, and kind of go from there. So I'm wondering, that's the question that I wanted to ask you guys, like how much like does your reading speed affect how you listen, or are they completely different?
I think. Do you want to go first, Tamika? Because I kind of answered it.
Yeah. I feel like I was a speed reader and I didn't know it. Because like I don't pay attention to small details. Like they're not important to me. So I do the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Like I don't like scan the pages. Like I read like 75% of the page. But like I would be lying if I said that like I didn't jump straight to the next piece of dialogue when I was, reading a book, because like I'm getting to the good parts. I want to know what's happening. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that definitely impacts like I think it definitely impacts because like I'm at 3 to 3.5, depending on, what service I'm using. So like Audible, I'm on
Mm-hmm.
3.5, and then on everything else, I'm on 3. So yeah, I think that definitely affects it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd never understood how people could jump around on the page. That was something that I couldn't figure out either, unless I was just trying to see, like, are they going to be okay in the next scene or something? So maybe I jump to the
Yeah.
dialogue. But other than
Mm-hmm.
that, the whole I read the first word and the last word in a sentence, and I don't get the middle detail. I don't know how people are processing this. I've tried, believe me. I've gone to many experiments, and I don't know how
Yeah.
people are doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I just find that really interesting because like even though the conversation is a little bit lopsided and we're on like the more 3.5 to 3 heavy spectrum on this end, but yeah, I think it's interesting like how your reading, like actual like reading practices affect how you listen. So I think one question I wanted to ask Tamika specifically is, for the people that want to necessarily get through audiobooks faster, how do you recommend someone actually going up in speeds? Do you recommend they just try it, or like move it up gradually until they
Uh,
get comfortable?
so I started at 2, and I was stuck at 2.5 for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I think, if you're reading contemporary specifically, because I'm going to say start with contemporary if you're wanting to like if you're wanting to go up in speed, it's just going to be way easier for you to comprehend like what's going on, because like a contemporary world, we're already in it, so like there's not like you have to like learn a magic system or whatever. um
Mm-hmm.
but like what I recommended and what I did was I would just gradually bump up, like, and I mean it's different based on like everything that the different services
Mm-hmm.
have different ways to bump up, whether you want to bump it up like a quarter or you want to bump it up like just like 0.5 or like however you want to do it, because I know some you can do it that way too, but like
Mm-hmm.
just bump it up a little bit and get used to it. And if it feels too fast, like just give it like 15 minutes, and then if it's still too slow,
Mm-hmm.
go back to 15 minutes and like go back to your normal speed. But like I just recommend doing that over and over again until you are comfortable, and when you go backwards it feels like you like it's too slow, like it's not going fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't think 3.5 is for everyone. I don't think that everyone would want to read at 3 or 3.5, just because, like, if you don't have a short attention span or you care about like every single detail, you're not gonna. I don't think you're gonna get that at 3.5 or 3. I think if you
Mm-hmm.
are, I think if you're okay with losing like a tiny little bit and like you can focus on it and you have a short attention span, I think that's when you should probably bump up. But that's what I would do. I would just like bump up a little bit. If you can't listen to it, go back down. But just keep doing it until you're up at the speed you want to be at.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think you bring up a really great point of that. This whole conversation, I don't want to make it so like it's one listening speed is the preferred way. I was joking in the beginning for those who don't know sarcasm. But I think it's really interesting that whatever you choose, whatever speed that you choose for audiobooks, it is not a competition for how quickly you can get through them, or is there a best way to like experience an audiobook? I think most narrators would be on Desiree's side, and like they'll maybe say like 1.5 or around that, or even 1, depending on the narrator, because that's where you get. Because I get it. A lot of narrators, the really good ones, put a lot of time and effort into making these audiobooks as good as they are, and the performance aspects. So I do get it. Like if you're reading like a hard hitting contemporary romance or any hard hitting contemporary where there's a lot of emotions, like really good narrators will actually put that emotion into the words that they're speaking to the reader. And sometimes you do miss a lot of that nuance and that detail when you do go up to 3.5. But I think also, like Tamika, if you have a low, I think I have a low attention span as well, because I'm like, when are we gonna get to the banging? Like, when is it gonna happen? I'm waiting. I'm reading this. Like, I'm like, it's not happening. Like, I swear, at 3.5, those sex scenes, like, they sound so slow. I'm like, my mind just immediately keys into them, and I'm like, see, I can pick out that word. I can pick out like steamy scene time words. I'm like, okay, we're getting okay. Time to focus. Everything else, okay. Background noise. Background noise.
Are you getting
But
the story at that point? Jeez.
well, because like I know myself and I know how many books I read. Like I'm probably gonna forget most of the story like as soon as I start the next book. So I'm like, I think it's to like maybe I don't know. Does this may be a good question to ask? Does this change? Does your listening speed change depending on the narrator? Let's say you have a horrible narrator. Would you want to stick like would you speed them up, or if you really like a narrator, would you slow them down, or are you always stuck at whatever your preferred listening speed is throughout the entire book?
You want to go first, Tamika?
Yeah. So I can't go any faster than 3.5. But if I could, I would for ones that I didn't like. The only time I slow down is for accents. Or if one narrator, so like most romances have dual narration, if one speaks much faster than the other or much slower, like however that like would work out. Because there have been times where I've had to like slow the narration down for like the female chapters and then speed it back up for the male chapters, which is a little annoying, but I've had to do that before. I think specifically I had to do that with The Younger Man or The Forbidden Man by Karina Halley. I don't remember what she
Oh,
changed.
Forbidden Man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had to do it for that one because the accent on him was a little harder. But other than that, if I could speed it up more, I would.
You know, I don't know if I actually speed it up if the narration is bad. Usually if the narration is bad, I just quit. But like for somewhere I just either I'm not going to actually read the book for whatever reason and I found the audiobook because I just listened to one that was kind of okay, but the narration wasn't great. I think I leave it at the same speed. One I read recently by Rachel Reed, the MM hockey series. I forget what it's called. One of them's called Heated Rivalry. The narration on that is absolutely terrible. Oh my God. I hated it. He does a Brooklyn accent, the worst Brooklyn accent I've ever heard in my life. The way he says curse words, it's stuck in my brain and I can't get it out. I hate it. But like I kept it at 2-point speed. I think that was as high as I could get. Like I think I put it at 2-point speed so I could get through it. Yeah, so maybe I do speed up a little bit, but I'm not going past 2. So it was just it was so bad. I hated listening to the sex scenes when he said the F word. I was like, oh God. It was so bad.
Oh my! I would say I actually, for really good narrators that I like, I will bump them down if I just enjoy their narration. There are some like Bonnie Turpin is one that I'm like, okay, like Like she brings it every time she does an audiobook. So I'm like, I want to savor this performance and like really kind of take it in. So like I do for like only like very rare narrators, but
Mm.
honestly, if I have a bad narrator, I usually skip chapters and see if I can still piece together the story. And
Oh
usually
God.
I can. Because yeah, I just like piece it all together. I'm like, okay, I get the gist. This happened. This kind of happened. I can listen here and kind of infer this. There was one. It was a little bit hard situation. That's why I asked the question. It was for an author that I really like. I really like their books, and I think her books are excellent. I just didn't have time to physically read them, but the audiobooks like made me like actively hate the book,
Oh
even though it
no.
wasn't the book's fault. It was I don't want to say the title or the author because I did an interview with them.
Oh
But
no.
I like the book. I didn't like the narrator.
Mm.
That is two separate things, but I definitely feel that depending on your listening speed and how the narrator interacts with that, it can almost hinder the book, even though it may not be the book's actual fault. Like
Yeah.
the story, like I ended up giving the book 5 out of 5 stars, but if I rated the audio performance, it was probably like a 1 or 0 out of 5. It was like one of those like really breathy, almost like she was like
Mm.
running a marathon. So everything she said
Mm.
was like always like so incredibly breathy. And I was like, after a while, it gets annoying. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That's why I recommend like a reread if you're new to
Yeah.
audio.
Mhm.
Like for that
Mhm.
reason alone. Like there is a narrator that I absolutely cannot stand listening to, and she does like a lot of romance audiobooks, and I just every time I start an audiobook I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to get used to this girl, and I'm gonna have to like adjust, and I'm gonna have to like her at some point,
Yeah.
so like I have to get used to it, so I have to sit down and like listen to those like in one sitting, or else I put off listening to
Mm-hmm.
the audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was in the same situation with, it's not this narrator, but um with Chloe Brown. I didn't like Chloe Brown.
Um,
I didn't like the
Mm.
narrator.
I hear that. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, I
For
get that.
me, oh, sorry.
Oh no, you can go.
Okay, I for me sometimes I feel like if I speed up something too quickly or if the narrator isn't good, that does affect how I feel about the book immensely. I listened to a TM Fraser book once, and it was the first
Mm-hmm.
time that I was trying to like bump up my speed, and I think I was listening to it at 2.5, and I got through them really quickly, and that was fun that I finished them quickly, but I gave both of the books like 3 stars. And I think thinking
Mm-hmm.
back on the story, I probably would have liked it better if I had just listened
Mm-hmm.
to it on a slower speed. So
Mm-hmm.
it really affected how much I was enjoying the book. The whole experience, I guess, of listening to the audiobook was kind of killed for me. And I recently listened to, well, before my player died, I recently listened to a book on tape. So you can't bump up the speed because it's a tape. And it was actually kind of lovely to listen to it on one time speed because the narrators were like just excellent. It was a really good narrator. It was Midnight Bayou by Nora Roberts. I haven't finished it because, like I said, my player died, but just listening
Mm-hmm.
to that on one time speed was really nice. And I felt like I was immersed in the world and I was really liking it. And all the accents that she was putting on, she was really good at her accents. Sometimes people try to do the Southern accent, especially Bayou ones, and they just sound god awful, but that
Right.
was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's overall like really cool to hear your thoughts on that. Because I definitely would say there has been a couple books that I listened to 3.5 speed that I ended up giving a 1 out of 5 star. So now to go back and then re-listen to it at a lower speed, and I was like, I was so wrong about this book. And then sometimes some of them I go straight up to 5 out of 5 stars
Mm,
because just so with some authors writing, I really think that more authors need to be more cognizant of how things translate to audio.
mm,
So, like for instance, in an audiobook, you don't need to say like he laughed or he whispered this. like if you tell the narrator to like whisper this line, you don't need to say, because I know sometimes some readers pick up on that where the author reads the line of dialogue normally and then he said he whispered. I'm like, but they're like, wait, you didn't whisper that.
Mm.
I don't know. It's a nitpicky thing I have, but yes, I think overall, I think what to glean from this conversation is like listen at whatever listening speed that you want. There is no rule book. You can go at whatever speed you want, and I think it's so tied to our identities as readers in a little bit in some ways. I bet you, even if I had this conversation with other booktubers and kind of probe them, ask some questions about how their normal reading style is like, that almost I could see that influencing their listening speed and how they want and what they want to get from the books that they consume. So I think this has been a just amazing conversation. I think there's a lot of really, really cool things that we could talk about for hours and hours and hours. But since this is part of my audiobook series, I always like to leave people off with a couple of recommendations. So like it doesn't have to be a favorite one that you have loved of all time. It could just be an audiobook that you like or you really like that you would recommend to people. So to give you guys some time to think about it, because I didn't tell you this question beforehand, I would recommend. I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit. It's part of the Mortals After Dark series. I would recommend. I think it's a 6-book, Kiss of a Demon, Demon King or Kiss of a Demon. I can never remember Crystal Cole's titles, but that narration in that book, it's the same narrator for all the books, but especially in that book, if you just want a good narrated audiobook, it's so incredibly well. He does female voices really well. He does the male voices really well. The humor lands in the book, and it's probably one of the best listening experiences I had while listening to an audiobook. And whatever speed you listen at, like I was at 3.5 and I didn't even realize that I was at 3.5. It just sounded so natural. So yeah, that would be one book that I would recommend to you guys.
Okay, so I don't have a romance, but there's one audiobook that I always recommend to people. This is probably like the only non-romance I've listened to, but it's romantic, so I'll say it's romance. Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor is an absolutely phenomenal audiobook. I love that audiobook with my entire being. That narrator was fantastic. I don't know his name because I don't know narrator names, but that's probably one of the most whimsical, magical audiobooks I've ever listened to. So I really enjoyed that one. That's a great audiobook.
Sorry, Dallas is whining.
No, it's okay.
So I'm on a paranormal kick, which I guess no one is shocked by this. So I just
Nope.
recently read Demon King by Elizabeth Briggs, and also the other one was Dark Prince by Michelle Hercules. Both of those were absolutely amazing on audio. They were just like, I would describe them both as like popcorn reads or like kind of like candy reads. So like
Mm-hmm.
they were like
Like
super,
fluff.
yeah, they were super consumable, but also like really good.
Mm-hmm.
And he's barking.
It's okay.
No. Wait, while she's getting her dogs, I thought of another one that's an actual romance. The In Depth series by J.D. Robb is also an excellent audiobook series. Have you listened to any of them?
I have. Those are good.
Okay.
Those are good audiobooks.
Yeah, those are excellent.
I only read the first one. I liked it. I just never. I just forgot to continue. I'm bad with series.
No, that's okay. Well, there's like 50 books, so most people aren't going to finish that one.
Yeah.
But the female narrator who does all the voices, she does a really good male voice. So cute dog.
Poor Tamika. Dallas
She's trying.
Like, give me attention. Give me attention. Give me love.
You've been ignoring your dogs for too long. But yeah, I like how she does the male voices also. So I just think that that's an excellent audiobook. Because sometimes, actually a lot of the times, I hate how male authors do female voices and vice versa. So she was really good for that.
Well, Dallas stopped for a second. So I will say though, like most of my reading is audiobooks at this point. I would say like 80-20. It's audiobooks and then physical books. So a lot of what I read is audio. But you know, I think that when you listen to a lot of audio, like me and Charles both do, it's easier to find what you like too, like with narrators and stuff.
I was about to say, Tamika, with your 80/20, like that would exclude a lot of Brianna Hale because your favorite author doesn't have a ton of audiobooks. I checked.
Oh
He
no.
only has
Uh,
one. It's very annoying.
I
Oh
was like, come
no.
on. That's what I was like, when Tamika recommended it, I was like, Tamika, she only has like one audio. I'm like, are you expecting me to actually read her books? Like with my
Wow.
eyes?
You're
But
a trip.
as a quick aside, I would have to say, now that I'm reading more, like with my eyeballs instead of like doing audiobooks, I find that I'm more and more critical of the writing.
Mm,
I'm very critical of like how you like if it's not gelling from that first line on that first page, I'm like, or the way you present information or tell us about the characters. Like I don't like big blocks of text, like paragraph after paragraph of these huge paragraphs where even when there's dialogue
mhm.
intermixed, because then I think there's some ways where it can make it harder to, this is very completely aside, very hard to read it very quickly because you have to sift through this ginormous paragraph. So I
Yeah.
just noticed that. I noticed that formatting really matters with ebooks, but that's another topic for another video. This is an audiobook series, but to wrap us up, I will link everyone's social media links as well as all their YouTube channels down below in the description box. You guys should definitely go check them out and subscribe to them and follow them on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, maybe BookBub or some other crazy platform that I'm not aware of that they're on. But thank you so much again to my guests for coming on this episode. I think it was a really, really excellent and fun conversation. So I hope you guys had fun too. And I'll catch you guys with a brand new video. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.